The desert sun burned down on young Tommy's shoulders as he walked beside his old donkey, Jasper. At 12 years old, Tommy had been on his own for 3 months now, ever since his father died from fever and they lost their small farm. All he had left was Jasper, a few coins in his torn pocket and the clothes on his back. Tommy's stomach growled loudly. He had not eaten anything since yesterday morning when a kind woman in the last town gave him half a corn cake. His lips were cracked from thirst and his feet ached in his worn-out boots. But Jasper was suffering too. The old donkey's ribs showed through his gray coat, and his steps were getting slower and slower. "Come on, boy," Tommy whispered, patting Jasper's neck. "We'll find water soon, we have to." The Arizona territory was harsh and unforgiving. Cactus plants stretched as far as Tommy could see, and the only sounds were the wind and their footsteps on the dusty ground. Tommy had been walking for days, hoping to reach the next town where he might find work or someone willing to help. As the afternoon grew hotter, Tommy noticed something strange ahead. There, sitting under the shade of a large rock, was a man. But this was not like any man Tommy had seen before. The stranger had long black hair, dark skin weathered by sun and wind, and wore clothes made of animal hide. Beads and feathers decorated his shirt, and a leather band circled his forehead. Tommy's heart began to beat faster. He had heard stories about Apache warriors from other travelers. Some said they were dangerous and would attack anyone who came near. Others said they were just trying to protect their land from settlers who took everything without asking. The Apache man looked up as Tommy approached. His dark eyes were sharp, but did not seem angry. Tommy stopped walking, unsure what to do. Jasper snorted and shook his head, sensing his young master's fear. For a long moment, neither Tommy nor the Apache man moved. Then the stranger raised his hand slowly, palm facing outward. Tommy remembered his father once telling him this was a sign of peace among the Indian tribes. "Water?" the Apache man asked in broken English, pointing to his mouth and then to Tommy. Tommy nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir, we need water badly." The Apache man stood up slowly. He was tall and moved like a cat, quiet and graceful. From behind the rock, he pulled out a leather water bag. Without hesitation, he walked over to Tommy and held it out. Tommy's hands shook as he took the water bag. He drank deeply, feeling the cool water wash away the dust in his throat. Then he poured some into his cupped hand for Jasper, who drank gratefully. "Thank you," Tommy said, handing the water bag back. "Thank you so much." The Apache man studied Tommy carefully. He seemed to notice the boy's torn clothes, his thin face, and the way he held on to Jasper like the donkey was his only friend in the world. "You alone?" the man asked. Tommy nodded. "Yes, sir. My pa died, and I lost our farm. It's just me and Jasper now." The Apache man's expression softened slightly. He said something in his own language, then switched back to English. "My name, Ahiga, means he fights. You?" "Tommy Morrison, sir, and this is Jasper." Ahiga looked at the donkey and then back at Tommy. "You walk far?" 3 days, Tommy replied. "Trying to get to Silver Creek town. Heard there might be work there." Ahiga shook his head. "Silver Creek far. 2 more days, maybe 3. Desert dangerous for boy alone." Tommy felt his heart sink. He had hoped the town was closer. 2 or 3 more days without food would be almost impossible, especially for Jasper, as, if reading his thoughts, Ahiga reached into a leather pouch at his side. He pulled out what looked like dried meat and some kind of flat bread. He offered half to Tommy. "Eat," Ahiga said simply. Tommy wanted to refuse. He had been taught to be polite and not take things from strangers. But his empty stomach made the decision for him. He accepted the food gratefully and shared some of the meat with Jasper. As they sat in the shade together, Tommy learned that Ahiga was not with his tribe right now. He had been sent to scout the area and watch for trouble, but something had gone wrong. His horse had stepped in a prairie dog hole 2 days ago and hurt its leg badly. Ahiga had to put the animal out of its misery, leaving him stranded in the desert just like Tommy. "We both lost," Ahiga said with a sad smile. "But maybe, together, we find way." Tommy looked at this stranger who had shown him more kindness than most white people had in recent months. Despite all the scary stories he had heard, Ahiga seemed like a good man who was just trying to survive, same as Tommy. "Would you like to ride Jasper for a while?" Tommy offered. "He's old, but he's strong. We could take turns." Ahiga looked surprised by the offer. His eyes widened and he stared at Tommy for a long moment. "You share donkey with Apache?" he asked, as if he could not believe what he was hearing. "You shared your water and food with me," Tommy replied. "Seems only fair." For the first time, Ahiga smiled a real smile. It changed his whole face, making him look younger and less fierce. "White boy has good heart," he said. "Very good heart, as he..." The sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. Tommy and Ahiga prepared to travel together. Neither of them knew that this simple act of kindness would lead to something much bigger than either could imagine. The next morning, Tommy woke to find Ahiga already awake, sitting quietly and watching the sunrise. The Apache warrior had not slept much, always listening for danger in the desert. Tommy stretched his sore muscles and checked on Jasper, who seemed better after the rest in water. "We go now," Ahiga said softly. Sun not too hot yet. They began walking together, taking turns riding Jasper as they had agreed. Tommy was amazed by how much Ahiga knew about the desert. The Apache man could find tiny signs of water that Tommy would never have noticed. He showed Tommy which plants were safe to eat and which ones would make them sick. "Desert not enemy, if you understand," Ahiga explained as they walked. "Desert is teacher. Shows you what you need, but only if you listen." As they traveled, Tommy learned more about Ahiga's life. The Apache warrior had a wife and 2 young children back with his tribe. His son was about Tommy's age, and his daughter was just learning to walk. Ahiga's eyes grew soft when he spoke of them. "I worry they think I not come back," Ahiga said. "Horse died, I walk many days now, they expect me 5 sons ago." Tommy felt sorry for the man. He knew what it was like to lose family, even if his situation was different. They'll know you're trying to get back to them. Families don't give up hope easy. By midday, the heat was becoming unbearable. They stopped under a cluster of rocks that provided some shade. Jasper was breathing hard, and Tommy could see the poor donkey was struggling with the heat and the extra weight of carrying 2 people. "Maybe we should rest until evening," Tommy suggested. "Jasper needs a break, and it's too hot to travel safely." Ahiga agreed, but Tommy could see the worry in the man's eyes. Every day away from his tribe meant more danger for everyone. Apache scouts who did not return on time often meant trouble was coming. As they rested, they heard a sound that made both of them freeze. Horses. Many horses, moving fast across the desert floor. Ahiga immediately became alert, his body tense, like a wild animal sensing danger. He motioned for Tommy to stay quiet and crawled to the edge of their hiding spot to look. Tommy's heart pounded as he waited. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Ahiga crawled back. "Soldiers," he whispered. "Many soldiers. They look for Apache." Tommy felt a chill despite the heat. He had heard stories about the troubles between the army and the Apache tribes. Both sides had done terrible things to each other, and there was little trust left between them. "Will they hurt you if they find you?" Tommy asked. Ahiga's expression was grim. "Apache alone in desert, they shoot first, ask questions later. Even scout like me." Tommy made a decision that surprised even himself. "Then you're not Apache right now. You're my friend helping me get to town." Ahiga stared at Tommy in amazement. "White boy protect Apache? Very dangerous for you." "You protected me when I needed water and food," Tommy replied. "Now it's my turn." But the soldiers did not find them. The horse sounds grew fainter and fainter until they disappeared completely. Still, both Tommy and Ahiga remained nervous for the rest of the day. That evening, as they prepared to start walking again in the cooler air, Ahiga did something unexpected. He pulled a small leather pouch from around his neck and showed Tommy what was inside. "Medicine pouch," Ahiga explained. "Keep bad spirits away, bring good luck." He pulled out a small turquoise stone and held it out to Tommy. "You take this for protection." Tommy shook his head. I can't take that. It belongs to your family, your tribe. You share donkey with stranger. You offer protect Apache from soldiers. You have Apache heart and white boy body. Ahiga pressed the stone into Tommy's hand. Stone choose you now. Tommy looked down at the beautiful blue-green stone. It was smooth and warm from being carried close to Ahiga's heart. Thank you, he said quietly. I'll take good care of it. They traveled through the night, stopping only when Jasper needed rest. Tommy was amazed by how different the desert looked in the moonlight. Everything seemed silver and mysterious, and the air was cool and sweet. As dawn approached, they climbed a small hill and saw something that made Tommy's heart leap with joy. In the distance, maybe a half-day's walk away, he could see buildings and smoke rising from chimneys. Silver Creek, Tommy shouted, forgetting to keep his voice down. Ahiga smiled at the boy's excitement, but his expression was also sad. Town, mean we must part ways, he said. Apache not welcome in Whitetown. Tommy felt a sudden sadness he had not expected. In just 2 days, Ahiga had become more than a traveling companion. He had become a friend, maybe the best friend Tommy had ever had. Where will you go? Tommy asked. Walk north to my people, take many days, but I strong. Ahiga looked at Tommy seriously. You good boy, Tommy Morrison. You remember Ahiga, always your friend, yes? Always, Tommy promised. But as they got closer to Silver Creek, they began to see other travelers on the road. Most were heading toward the town, and Tommy noticed that many of them were armed men on horseback, cowboys, ranch hands, and what looked like bounty hunters. Something was happening in Silver Creek, and Tommy had a feeling it was not good news for anyone, especially not for an Apache warrior trying to make his way home. As Tommy and Ahiga approached the outskirts of Silver Creek, they could hear shouting voices and see dust clouds from many horses. Something big was happening in the town, and it did not sound peaceful. Tommy felt Ahiga tense beside him. The Apache warrior's hand moved instinctively toward his knife, though Tommy knew Ahiga would not use it unless he had no choice. Bad feeling about this place, Ahiga said quietly. Maybe better I go different way. But before they could decide what to do, 3 cowboys on horseback came riding toward them fast. Tommy's heart started beating quickly as he recognized the type of men these were. Hard-faced, with guns on their hips and anger in their eyes. Hey there, boy, the lead cowboy called out, pulling his horse to a stop near them. You seen any Apache around these parts? Tommy swallowed hard. Ahiga stood perfectly still beside him, but Tommy could feel the tension radiating from his friend. Just me and my traveling companion here, Tommy said, trying to keep his voice steady. We're heading to Silver Creek looking for work. The cowboy looked Ahiga up and down suspiciously. This your companion? He looks mighty dark for a regular traveler. Tommy's mind raced. He had to think of something fast. He's Mexican, Tommy lied. Helped me and my donkey when we ran out of water. Good tracker, knows the desert. Ahiga remained silent, understanding that speaking might give away his Apache accent. The cowboy did not look convinced, but his attention was drawn to Jasper. That's a fine-looking donkey. Strong animal. You interested in selling him? No, sir, Tommy said firmly. Jasper's all I got. Might not be your choice, boy, another cowboy said with a mean grin. Town's got problems, and we're forming up a posse. Could use that donkey for supplies. Tommy felt anger rise in his chest. These men wanted to take Jasper just because they could. It reminded him of how the bank had taken his family's farm. The donkey stays with me, Tommy said, his voice stronger now. The lead cowboy laughed. You got spirit, I'll give you that. Tell you what, boy. Town's offering good money for anyone who can help us track down some Apache raiders. Your Mexican friend here any good at tracking Indians? Tommy glanced at Ahiga, who gave the smallest nod. He's the best tracker I've ever seen, Tommy said truthfully. Then bring him to town. Sheriff's paying $20 to any man who can. Help us hunt down the Apache who stole our cattle and horses. After the cowboys rode away, Tommy and Ahiga looked at each other with worry. They want you to help hunt your own people, Tommy said. Ahiga's jaw was tight. My people not steal cattle. Apache hunt buffalo, deer, not need white man's cows. Then who did steal them? Maybe other Apache band. Maybe not Apache at all. White men sometimes blame Apache for all bad things. As they got closer to Silver Creek, Tommy could see the town was in chaos. Men with guns were everywhere, loading wagons with supplies and ammunition. The sheriff, a big man with a gray mustache, was standing on the steps of his office, talking loudly to a crowd. "We know there's Apache in the area," the sheriff was shouting. "They took 40 head of cattle from the Morrison Ranch and killed 2 of our boys. We're going to track them down and make them pay." Tommy felt his blood turn cold. The Morrison Ranch. That had been his family's name, though he did not think these were his relatives. Still, hearing his name connected to violence made him feel sick. Ahiga grabbed Tommy's arm gently. "We should go, this very dangerous." But as they started to turn away, the sheriff spotted them. "Hey, you there with the donkey? Come here." Tommy had no choice but to approach. He kept Ahiga close beside him, hoping their story would hold up. "You boys looking for work?" the sheriff asked. "We need every man we can get to track these Apache devils. We just need supplies and maybe a place to rest," Tommy said. "We've been traveling for days." The sheriff looked at Ahiga suspiciously. "What's wrong with your friend? He don't talk much." "He's Mexican," Tommy repeated. "Doesn't speak much English." "Mexican, huh?" The sheriff walked closer to Ahiga, studying his face. "You look more Indian than Mexican to me." Tommy's heart pounded, so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. Ahiga remained perfectly calm, but Tommy could see the muscles in his jaw tighten. Just then, a commotion broke out at the other end of the street. Someone was shouting about finding tracks, and all. The men started rushing in that direction. "Stay here," the sheriff told Tommy and Ahiga. "I'll be back to talk to you more." As soon as the sheriff was gone, Ahiga turned to Tommy. "We must leave now. Very dangerous." But Tommy looked around at all the armed men, all the anger and hate in the air, and he made another decision that surprised himself. "What if we could stop this?" he asked Ahiga. "What if we could prove your people didn't steal those cattle?" Ahiga stared at Tommy. "How we do that? No one listened to Apache. No one listened to Homeless Boy." "Maybe not," Tommy said. "But what if we could find out who really took those cattle? What if we could show them the truth?" "Very dangerous, Tommy. These men want blood, not care about truth." Tommy looked at his friend. This man who had shared water and food when Tommy was dying of thirst, who had taught him about the desert, who had become like family to him. "You're right. It's dangerous," Tommy said. "But running away won't solve anything. Those men will keep hunting Apache whether you're here or not. But if we can find the real thieves—" Ahiga was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You have brave heart, Tommy Morrison. Maybe too brave. But Ahiga helped you try." Neither of them knew that their decision to stay and seek the truth would lead to the most dangerous night of their lives and a morning that would change everything for both of them. That evening, while the men of Silver Creek prepared their weapons and planned their attack on the Apache, Tommy and Ahiga quietly left town. They had told the sheriff they needed to find grass for Jasper, but their real mission was much more dangerous. Ahiga had convinced Tommy that the only way to find the truth was to visit the scene where the cattle had been stolen. The Morrison Ranch was about 5 miles south of town, and they would have to be very careful not to be seen by any of the angry ranchers or cowboys. "We look for signs," Ahiga explained as they rode through the darkness. "Tracks tell story. Hoof prints, broken branches, horse droppings. Everything has meaning." Tommy had never realized how much information could be found just by looking at the ground. Ahiga moved like a ghost in the moonlight, stopping every few yards to examine something Tommy could not even see. When they reached the Morrison Ranch, Tommy was shocked by what they found. The place had been completely destroyed. Fences were broken, the barn door hung open, and there were clear signs of a fight. But something did not feel right about it. "Look here," Ahiga whispered, pointing to the ground near the barn. "Horse tracks, but not Indian ponies." Tommy knelt beside Ahiga and tried to see what he was seeing. "How can you tell?" "Indian ponies, smaller, lighter, make different tracks. These tracks from big horses. Heavy shoes like white men use. Ahiga continued examining the area, his face growing more serious with each discovery. Very strange, he said after several minutes. Cattle stolen, yes, but tracks show something different. Look. He pointed to a set of hoofprints leading away from the ranch. Cattle driven north toward town. Why Apache drive cattle toward White Town? Apache take cattle to mountains away from people. Tommy felt excitement growing in his chest. You mean whoever stole these cattle wanted people to think Apache did it? Maybe. We follow tracks, see where they go. They followed the trail for more than an hour, with Ahiga reading signs in the dirt like Tommy might read words in a book. The trail led them in a wide circle that eventually brought them to a hidden canyon, about 2 miles from Silver Creek. What they found there made Tommy's blood run cold. In the canyon, hidden behind rocks and brush, were the stolen cattle, but they were not being guarded by Apache warriors. Instead, 3 white men sat around a small fire drinking and laughing. Tommy recognized one of them immediately. It was Jake Morrison, a distant cousin who had always been jealous of Tommy's family's ranch. Jake had tried to buy their land for almost nothing when Tommy's father was dying, and had been angry when Tommy's father refused. I can't believe how easy this was, Jake was saying to his companions. Steal Morrison's cattle, kill a couple of his hired hands, and blame it on the Apache. By tomorrow night, the whole territory will think the Apache are on the warpath, and while everyone's out hunting Indians, another man added, we'll drive these cattle to Colorado and sell them, make enough money to buy that land we wanted. Best part is, the third man said, when they don't find any Apache, they'll just assume the Indians ran back to Mexico. No one will ever connect us to this. Tommy felt sick to his stomach. These men had killed innocent people and were planning to let a whole tribe be hunted and possibly killed for crimes they did not commit. Ahiga touched Tommy's shoulder and motioned for them to back away quietly. They needed to get back to town, with this information before the posse left to hunt the Apache. But as they tried to leave, Jasper stepped on a loose rock. The sound echoed through the canyon like a gunshot. What was that? Jake Morrison called out. Probably just a coyote, one of his friends said, but Jake was already grabbing his rifle. I don't take chances, Jake said. You two stay here with the cattle, I'll check it out. Tommy and Ahiga tried to move away quickly, but Jake was moving fast and knew the area well. Within minutes, they heard his voice behind them. Stop right there. I know someone's out there. They had no choice. Jake Morrison appeared from behind a boulder with his rifle pointed straight at them. Well, Jake said with an evil grin. If it isn't little Tommy Morrison. Thought you were dead, boy. Hello, Jake, Tommy said, trying to keep his voice calm. Heard you were looking for the men who stole your cattle. Jake laughed coldly. My cattle? Boy, I think you're confused. These are Apache cattle now, taken in a raid. At least that's what everyone in town believes. We know what you did, Jake. We heard you talking. Jake's expression turned dangerous. Then you know too much. He looked at Ahiga with hatred. And you brought a real Apache with you. How convenient. When they find your bodies, it'll just prove how dangerous these Indians really are. Tommy stepped slightly in front of Ahiga, even though he knew it would not help much against a rifle. You killed innocent people, Jake. Your own family's hired hands. They were just in the wrong place, at the wrong time, Jake said without any emotion, just like you are now. But Ahiga had not been standing still during this conversation. Moving so quietly that even Tommy had not noticed, the Apache warrior had positioned himself near a large rock. When Jake raised his rifle to shoot, Ahiga threw the rock with perfect aim. The rock struck Jake's rifle just as he pulled the trigger, sending the shot wild. In the same moment, Ahiga lunged forward and wrestled the weapon away from the surprised man. Run, Tommy, Ahiga shouted. Get to town. Tell them truth. But Tommy could not leave his friend to face 3 armed men alone. Instead, he grabbed Jake's legs and held on tight, preventing the man from chasing Ahiga. The sound of the gunshot had alerted Jake's partners, and Tommy could hear them shouting and running toward them. He and Ahiga were outnumbered and in terrible danger, but sometimes, help comes from the most unexpected places. The sound of gunfire in the desert night carried far in the still air. What Tommy and Ahiga did not know was that Sheriff Williams had decided to send out a small scouting party before the main posse left in the morning. He wanted to make sure they were heading in the right direction. When the sheriff and his 4 men heard the gunshot, they rode hard toward the sound. They arrived at the canyon just as Jake Morrison's 2 partners were running toward the place, where Tommy was holding onto Jake's legs while Ahiga kept the rifle pointed at all 3 men. "Drop your weapons," Sheriff Williams shouted as he and his men surrounded the area. "All of you." Jake Morrison looked up at the sheriff with relief. "Sheriff, thank God you're here. This Apache and the boy attacked us. They're working together." But Sheriff Williams was not stupid. He had been a lawman for 15 years and knew how to read a situation. He saw the stolen cattle in the canyon, saw Jake Morrison and his men, with camping gear like they had been there for days, and saw Tommy Morrison, the boy everyone thought was dead. "Well, well," the sheriff said slowly. "Looks like we got ourselves a mystery here." He looked at Tommy. "Boy, everyone in town thinks you died with your pa. Where you been?" Tommy's heart was pounding, but he knew this was their only chance to tell the truth. "Sheriff, these men stole those cattle and killed your people. They were planning to blame it on the Apache so no one would suspect them." "That's a lie," Jake Morrison shouted. "The boy's been living with Apache. He's turned against his own people." Sheriff Williams held up his hand for silence. He looked around the scene carefully, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. "Funny thing, Jake," the sheriff said. "If the Apaches stole these cattle, why are they hidden here instead of being driven toward the mountains? And why do all the horse tracks around here look like they came from shod horses instead of Indian ponies?" Jake's face went pale. He had not expected the sheriff to be so observant. "And another funny thing," the sheriff continued. "My deputy found something interesting at the Morrison Ranch today. A belt buckle with your initials on it, Jake. Want to explain how that got there?" Tommy looked at Ahiga with amazement. The Apache man gave him the smallest smile. Ahiga had found the belt buckle during their investigation but had not told Tommy about it. I lost that belt buckle weeks ago," Jake stammered. "Could have been anywhere." "Could have been," the sheriff agreed. "But it wasn't anywhere. It was right next to the barn where 2 good men died." His voice grew hard. "And now I find you here with the stolen cattle, and you're trying to tell me the Apache did it?" One of Jake's partners, seeing that they were caught, decided to save himself. "It was all Jake's idea," he blurted out. "He said if we made it look like Apache did it, no one would ever suspect us. We never meant for anyone to get killed." "Shut up, you fool!" Jake screamed at his partner, but it was too late. The truth was out. Sheriff Williams looked at Tommy with new respect. "Boy, how did you figure this out?" Tommy glanced at Ahiga, who nodded encouragingly. "My friend here is the best tracker I've ever seen. He could tell from the signs that Apache didn't do this." "Your friend?" The sheriff looked at Ahiga suspiciously. "This man's Apache, isn't he?" Tommy felt his heart stop. After everything they had been through, was Ahiga going to be arrested anyway? "Yes, sir," Tommy said quietly. "He's Apache, but he's also the man who saved my life in the desert. He shared his water and food with me when I was dying. And he helped me find the truth about who really stole those cattle." The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. All around them, his men waited to see what he would decide. "Apache," the sheriff said to Ahiga. "You speak English?" "Little bit," Ahiga replied carefully. "Why? You help white boy find truth? Your people and our people been fighting for years." Ahiga straightened his shoulders and looked the sheriff directly in the eyes. "Boy share donkey with stranger. Boy have good heart. Truth is truth, no matter color of skin." Sheriff Williams nodded slowly. "I reckon that's about the smartest thing anyone said in this whole mess." He turned to his men. "Arrest Jake Morrison and his partners for cattle theft and murder. And boys," he added, "I don't want to hear any talk about hunting Apache tomorrow. Looks like the Apache aren't our problem." As Jake Morrison and his men were being tied up, the sheriff approached Tommy and Ahiga. "Boy, you got any family left?" Tommy shook his head. "No, sir. Just me and Jasper now." Well, you can't keep living in the desert. Town could use a boy like you, smart, brave, willing to stand up for what's right. He looked at Ahiga. And as for you, Apache, I'm going to do something I never thought I'd do. I'm going to give you a horse and supplies to get back to your people. You've earned safe passage through my territory. Ahiga's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. But the sheriff was not finished. There's just one condition. If any more trouble starts between your people and the settlers, I want you to remember what happened here tonight. Sometimes talking is better than fighting. I remember, Ahiga promised. Tell my people about Boy with Good Heart. Tell them, some white people speak truth. As dawn broke over the desert, Tommy realized that his life was about to change completely. But this time, the change felt like the beginning of something good, instead of the end of everything he had known. Word traveled fast in the Arizona territory. By the time Tommy and Ahiga returned to Silver Creek the next morning, the whole town knew what had happened. The men who had been preparing to hunt Apache were putting away their weapons, some looking ashamed of how quickly they had believed the worst. But not everyone was happy about the truth coming out. I still don't trust that Apache, muttered Bill Hawkins, the owner of the general store. Just because he helped this one time doesn't mean his people won't cause trouble later. Several other men nodded in agreement. Tommy could see that even though Ahiga had helped solve the crime, many people still saw him as a threat simply because he was different. As they walked down the main street together, Tommy noticed something that made his heart swell with pride. Despite the suspicious looks and whispered comments, several people stepped forward to thank Ahiga personally. Mrs. Henderson, the teacher, approached them first. Young man, she said to Ahiga, I want to thank you for helping find the truth. My husband was one of the men getting ready to ride out after your people. You may have saved lives on both sides. Then came Pastor Johnson from the church. Son, he said to Ahiga, what you did took real courage, standing up for truth when it would have been easier and safer to just disappear into the desert. One by one, more people came forward. The blacksmith, whose brother had been killed in the fake raid, shook Ahiga's hand. The doctor thanked him for preventing a war that would have brought more wounded men to his door. Even some of the cowboys who had been eager to fight began to nod respectfully at the Apache warrior. But the most surprising person to approach them was Colonel James Morrison, the owner of the ranch where the cattle had been stolen. Tommy had never met this distant relative, but he recognized the family resemblance. You must be young, Tommy, the colonel said with a sad smile. I heard about your father. I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm ashamed I didn't know you needed help. Tommy did not know what to say. This man seemed genuinely sorry, not like Jake Morrison, who had tried to steal from his dying father. And you, the colonel said to Ahiga, you have done something remarkable. You could have stayed hidden in the desert, but you chose to help us find the truth. That takes honor. Colonel Morrison pulled out a leather pouch from his jacket. The reward money for finding my cattle belongs to both of you. $50 each. It's not much, but it's a start. Tommy stared at the money in amazement. $50 was more than he had ever seen at one time. But what happened next surprised him even more. Tommy, Colonel Morrison continued, I have a proposition for you. I need someone to help manage my ranch, someone I can trust. The job comes with a small house, meals, and a fair wage. You'd be working with cattle and horses, learning a trade that could serve you well your whole life. Tommy felt his eyes fill with tears. After months of wondering if he would survive each day, someone was offering him a real home and a future. But then he looked at Ahiga and felt his heart grow heavy. His friend would be leaving soon to return to his people, and Tommy might never see him again. Ahiga seemed to understand what Tommy was thinking. You take job, he said quietly. Good opportunity for boy with good heart. But what about you? Tommy asked. When will I see you again? Ahiga smiled and pulled something from his medicine pouch. It was a small piece of turquoise, similar to the one he had given Tommy but carved with different symbols. You keep this too, Ahiga said, pressing it into Tommy's hand. When you need friend, you hold stones, and remember, Ahiga always your brother, no matter how far apart. Sheriff Williams approached them with a fine-looking brown horse. "This is for you, Apache. Good, strong animal. Should get you back to your people safely." Ahiga ran his hands over the horse's neck, clearly impressed. "Very good horse. I thank you." "There's something else," the sheriff said. "I've been thinking about what you said, about talking being better than fighting. I want to make you an offer." Everyone gathered around to hear what the sheriff had to say. "If your people ever need to send messages to the white settlements, or if we need to communicate with your tribe, would you be willing to serve as a messenger? A man who speaks for peace instead of war?" Ahiga considered this carefully. "I speak to my chief. Tell him about boy who share donkey, about white people who want truth more than blood. Maybe we find new way." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, it became time for Ahiga to leave. Tommy felt like his heart was breaking, but he also felt proud of his friend and grateful for everything they had shared. "I will never forget you," Tommy told Ahiga as they said goodbye. "And I never forget boy who see Apache as man, not enemy," Ahiga replied. The two friends embraced, and then Ahiga mounted his new horse. But before he rode away, something unexpected happened. One by one, the cowboys who had been ready to hunt Apache the day before began to line up along the main street. At first, Tommy thought they might be planning to cause trouble. But as Ahiga rode slowly past them, something beautiful happened. The first cowboy removed his hat in a gesture of respect. Then the next one did the same. Soon, the entire line of men stood with their hats in their hands, showing honor to the Apache warrior who had chosen truth over safety. Even Bill Hawkins, who had been muttering suspiciously earlier, took off his hat and nodded respectfully as Ahiga passed. Tommy watched with tears in his eyes as his friend rode out of town between two lines of men who had been his enemies just one day before. The sight was so moving that even some of the women watching from their windows began to cry. As Ahiga reached the edge of town, he turned back one last time. He raised his hand in the same gesture of peace he had shown Tommy that first day in the desert. Then he touched the spot where his medicine pouch hung over his heart and pointed to Tommy. Tommy understood. Their friendship would live in both their hearts forever. Months later, Tommy heard that Ahiga had indeed spoken to his chief about finding peaceful ways to solve problems between the tribes and the settlers. The Apache began sending messages through Ahiga when they had concerns, and the white community started listening instead of just preparing for war. Tommy thrived on Colonel Morrison's ranch, learning everything he could about managing cattle and horses. He saved his money carefully and eventually bought back his family's original land. But he never forgot the lesson Ahiga had taught him about sharing what you have with those in need. Years passed, and Tommy grew into a respected rancher and leader in the community. He married a kind woman who understood why he always wore 2 turquoise stones on a leather cord around his neck. He told his children stories about the Apache warrior who had shared water with a dying boy and taught him that friendship knows no boundaries. And sometimes, on clear desert nights when the wind was just right, Tommy would look toward the mountains and remember the friend who had changed his life forever. He would hold the turquoise stones and know that somewhere out there, Ahiga was looking at the same stars and remembering the homeless boy who had shared his donkey with a lost Apache. The story of their friendship became legend in the Arizona territory, told and retold around campfires and in saloons. People said it proved that even in the hardest times when fear and hatred seemed strongest, one act of kindness could change everything. And they were right.